Have you ever heard a term and wondered just where it came from? When that term holds an alarming meaning like to lose your mind, I have. When somebody's actions are so heinous they cement themselves in history as a term, it had to have made an impact. From the original crime to the controversial video games that followed, let's take a look at the origin and meaning of the term Going Postal. Edmond, Oklahoma, never suspected it would be the location of a historical event like this. On the northern border of Oklahoma City, it is the 5th most populated city in Oklahoma. This event took place in 1986, centering around Patrick Sherrill. While not much is known about Patrick's early life, he was not a well-liked man. He was described as a social inept loner, who children would make fun of, and in turn he would chase them. Worse yet, he was known as a peeping Tom, roaming around the neighborhood at night looking into people's windows. All in all, he was a social weirdo, who couldn't seem to hold down a job, often blaming management for his firings, and his latest position was in jeopardy of going down the same road. Patrick was a relief carrier for the U.S. Postal Service, which meant he worked alternate routes on different days depending on his rank and seniority. After being reported multiple times for misdirecting mail and outbursts against other employees, Patrick was called in by supervisors Bill Bland and Richard Esser Jr. to be reprimanded. Patrick was described as an erratic and irritable worker who would comment that he was going to have his revenge for being disciplined in the past. Everything about his behavior was concerning, and this latest talk with the supervisors was enough to push him over the edge. People should have listened to his threats, because on August 20th, 1986, Patrick appeared at the post office with a small bag that contained 3 semi-automatic pistols, along with plenty of ammunition. Patrick was on a mission to take out the supervisors who had scorned him the day before, and unfortunately for Richard Esser, he found him. Shortly after 7 o'clock a.m., he shot and killed Richard and searched for Bill, killing any and all co-workers he came across in the way. Bill wouldn't be found, for he had overslept and didn't arrive until the shooting was over. But Patrick was going to do plenty of damage until then. At the time, 100 workers were in the building. 14 of them would be taken by Patrick's rampage, and 6 more were injured before the killer took himself out with a shot to the forehead. Police arrived not knowing that the suspect was already dead, and tried for 45 minutes to communicate with him before entering the building, only to find the victims and the killer were deceased. The rampage coined the term Going Postal, and unfortunately, this is not the only event that gave that phrase meaning. In the following 13 years, there were 15 postal worker shootings, one led by worker John Taylor. Unlike Patrick, John was described as a delightful person to work with, a model employee and kind, so it was all the more shocking when he took out his wife before arriving at work to end the lives of 2 other co-workers. In a similar fashion, he shot himself and was taken to the hospital where he was pronounced brain dead and would succumb to his injuries later that night. Patrick's rampage sparked an increase in workplace violence in general. As a result, there were tightened practices in new hiring, employee management, and safety practices in the workplace. In 1996, federal law concerning homicide expanded to include postal workers. Patrick's original rampage is considered the deadliest workplace shooting in U.S. history, as well as the deadliest solo gunman shooting in Oklahoma history. So, it may be reasonable that some people took offense to the 1997 Windows game Postal that was released in the midst of all of this. From developer Running with Scissors, Postal is an isometric top-down shooter that follows a man simply named Postal Dude, who roams the streets of Paradise, Arizona, taking out anyone he sees with a myriad of weapons. All while demons talk in his head and the sounds of explosion and screaming adorns the soundtrack. People called it sick, and that's exactly what the developers were looking for. Since then, there have been 4 sequels and a remake, however, these are much goofier additions to the series. The original game is still very haunting to play, as it delves into the broken mind of somebody who would do this. It feels very Columbine-y, and the fact that it took place based off of a true event makes it all the creepier. Thanks for watching. For more true crime and horror, please consider subscribing. Game with me on Twitch, follow me on Twitter, and as always, be well.